Hi, everyone. How are you doing? Today is going to be a little bit different, a little bit special today. Today, we are going to have a discussion about what's been going on um, between COVID-19 and the death of George Floyd and many others um, having to deal with racism has finally appears to be coming full circle. And what I want to do, since I'm not able to go out and put my feet to ground like many others because of this pandemic right now, is that I've decided to use my platform and to open up discussions to many people within my circle, within my connection, my community, to talk about these issues and to allow you guys to see the transparency that some of us have when we're going through these types of situations. It's very difficult, it's hard, and it's sad. And a lot of us who are stepping pretty much outside of our professional roles is starting to be personal. It's starting to hit us personal because for many of us, like myself, who as we said, wear the color, who are operating within a shade of skin that others are fearful of. I'm proud to be an African American woman who has had my own experiences dealing with racism, who I don't understand why, but it's there and it happens. But today I have a special guest that I'm going to introduce you to, and we're going to have this conversation openly and boldly. So without further ado, I introduce you to my son, Mizel Elicio Alexander Square Smith. Hi, honey. Unmute yourself, sweetie.
Hey.
Hey. How are you?
I'm cool.
Good. I just introduced you to the people to let you know that you are my hijo, my son, the oxygen in my lungs, and we are going to talk about what's going on. You know, one thing I'm grateful for is that we can have these conversations. We've been having these conversations since as long as I can remember. You being old enough to always ask me those why, why, yeah. You know, and me being, pulling me on the carpet for me to have to find these answers for you over the time. But I wanted to have a conversation with you, and forgive me if I go back and forth between calling you your nickname for the world to hear, but see, my son's name is Mizel, but I don't call him Mizel. I call him Elicio, or I call him another nickname, but I'm going to leave that personally for us. But I know you saw the video on Mr. George Floyd.
I actually didn't.
You didn't see it?
No, I saw screenshots. I saw I saw screenshots of it. Specifically the whole neck thing. But okay. As of right now, I decided I didn't need to look at the whole video.
Okay.
Simply because I know what it is, enough people have described it. I got what I need to know that I need to act. So there's no need for me to look into it because I know I've come across a lot of just throughout life. I've come across a lot of disturbing images. I've heard a lot of disturbing stories. I know how that impacts me. So to kind of preserve my energy and kind of direct it to what'll be more productive. Like I'll have the pain. The pain is there, but I don't need to amplify the pain. I need to, when stuff like this happens, I get more on like, okay, I know what just happened. I know when to cut it off. Like I'm not about to It's not about indulgence. Like, I don't need to experience certain things when enough has already been said about it, as well as I can get pieces, because everything is a diet. You know, it's a diet. Food is a diet. What you watch in the media is a diet. Everything is a diet, and you are going to become influenced by whatever you take in. So I took in up to a point, which was in the form of screenshots and summaries, and that was it.
Okay, and so that's my assumption, that that so many people have seen it. And then there are some people who can't see but so much. But for me, sweetie, what I did, I saw it when it first came out.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it pretty much stopped. While I was watching it, it was like in frames. It was like my mind's eye literally stopped. And I literally saw like frame by frame by frame to the point where he took his last breath. But what got me, and I think for a lot of African American women and mothers, what got me when he called for his mother.
Yeah.
Right there, no longer did it go from Mr. Floyd laying there. I heard you. I saw you. And I'm like, oh my God. And I wasn't the only one that happened to. And I'm like, had to take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And of course, and I agree, we have to take this in portions, because if you sit there and you constantly watch it over and over and over again, in addition to COVID-19 right there side by side with it, you will have a mental, physical, all-inclusive experience that's completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And what I wanted to do is just to talk to you and not for a long period of time. And I just wanted folks to actually see, how African American mothers and sons have a conversation. And like I said, one thing, I'm blessed and happy that we've always been able to have conversations. I mean, you would throw me growing up. You threw me with a lot of the conversations that you wanted to have. And I always gave you the opportunity to ask me whatever you wanted to ask me, even if it did knock me off my feet. But I wanted to just talk about what is going on, your experiences in it. And not only do you have this role of being an African American man in this society, you are a father, you are a husband, you're not just my son, you're a brother, you've got all these other roles that's been assigned to you. And now that these things are happening, how are you dealing with it? And what does it look like through your eyes? And what is it that people need to know from you, where they don't have to fear you because you are a male, because you're an African American young man? Because when they see you, they don't see the scholar. They don't see the man that has a mathematical mind of that I can't even describe. Who has a form of an analytical thought pattern that most people can't comprehend. They don't see that when they see you walking down the street. They don't see that when you're driving. What they see is a Black man that they're fearful of. So what is it that you want to tell white people, racists, people who just don't understand walking in your shoes?
Quite frankly, what I want to tell them, I don't think that I completely have that processed yet. As much as I think, for me, I'm the kind of person that I'm the one that sits in a conversation, or I sit in like a group of people talking, and as much as I can be long-winded as crap, like if depending on how new the conversation is with respect to my head, I'm just listening. Um, and it takes me a little minute to process. So even with you talking about that, right? I actually have a story that you actually don't even know. Yeah, you don't even actually know that it happened um, at my previous job. So where I work at in my previous like job, um, what it did is sat on a wide street near like the center of the city. You know, and for people that don't know, Richmond, it's based in Richmond, Virginia, and Richmond's not the biggest city in the world, but as you get closer to the city, there's a lot of buildings that are uh, they have, you know, the warehouses. People have gutted out warehouses and made office spaces and stuff like that. So I actually, to get into my job, I have to walk down this street, which doesn't have much traffic. I think it's a one-way street. Across the street is another warehouse-looking building. You don't know what's in it, and and at the corner is a cafe. People can sit outside. It's got a pretty place, I think like Plant Zero or something like that. It's the cafe's name. But there was a woman. There was a Caucasian woman, not exactly sure her age, but it was only us two walking like on the street. Now, like I said, the street is at least 2 to 3.5 car widths wide. It's not a skinny alley, but it is a street that has no traffic. And I already picked up as I was like, while we were walking, I already picked up that she was like looking. And you know, it basically got to a point where I had to walk the same direction she did, but she literally just like turned around at one point when I was like still trying to walk. Um, and or what happened was I think she was trying to go into the building that was like right beside me, but when I tried to go into the building that was a little ahead of her, she kind of turned around to like act as though she wasn't going to open her door because I don't know. Consider it small corners. Consider it it's an alley. There's a few there's a few parts in my head that will try to process whether or not that's kind of a racially charged thing. Because me trying to play, I I try to think through things. Me trying to be in her shoes before I go into like race. Um, I'm the kind of person that if I'm walking down any kind of street and no one else and there's people there regardless of the street it is, I'm gonna look directly at you to let you know I see you, you see me. This ain't gonna be no kind of like you can walk and I'm just gonna act like I'm not hiding. So um so I can imagine that, she that could have been part of her fear. And then I still don't discredit the fact that she peeped that I was black and we're in an alley like street between two warehouses. And she just can't imagine that I work there. So, you know, when it comes to like people that are like racist or people that don't care or don't see that racial issues still exist. The most recent question that I legit had, ironic that you talk about me as a kid, is literally like I wonder what is the root answer to why, right? Like why do you have a whole issue with a race? And before someone can give me an answer, because I'm I'm a nerd, so I scour the internet when I need to for strategic purposes. So I've found the weird parts of the internet and the channels where there's literally things like white power TV and stuff like this, and these channels that like they bring in boys. I literally saw a dude who's like maybe 11, and they was like,
Mm.
okay, so tell us about the blacks. What was wrong with the blacks when you experienced them? And they're at like a common roundabout like kitchen table, and he's like, well, blacks are really like they're really, they were just disruptive, and they were kind of mean. They're bullying around in the school. and basically just kind of like that's all he had to say, and they're just kind of like affirming validating his thought process as a little kid on this platform for other people that are hip to those channels to access. And so I'm like, I ask why, like what is your true valid. Don't throw religion in this. I don't want to hear nothing about religion. I'm a religious man, but don't throw religion into it. Like what you believe makes you you're supposed to be superior. I doubt there is any religious text, Siddhartha Gautama, Buddhism, Hinduism, Jaidism, like none of them. I'm even obviously the Bible and all this stuff. Nobody establishes that there is a superiority amongst humans, because in the sense humans are all flawed and we're all supposed to be kind of going on a collective journey to get to something better, whatever better is. So I'm like, on what grounds do you truly believe that our whole race is a problem? Beyond your particular experiences with that race or people of that race, what literally is your problem? Like so it's like I don't even have anything to say, because it's more of I literally have questions to ask, so we can really have that conversation, not with obviously not the kind of people that they refuse to kind of accept new opinions, but the ones that legit may have opinions, but they're willing to have a conversation about it, because at the end of the day, like a lot of the crap on all the sides is all systemic. It's ongoing, like feedback loops of stupid crap, ignorance, pain, poverty, pitfalls of this and that are just kind of doing things on all fronts. It's causing the various issues that we in the Black community deal with. It also perpetuates the ignorance that people that are racist against us, because it's not just white people that have a racial perspective, an unfair racial perspective on African and African descendant people. You can hear about it in all the times. There was some commercials in I think a few Asian countries that were like horribly racist. People have stereotypes. There was talks even where some people felt racially profiled in some Asian countries now, because there's rumors that people are assuming that coronavirus came from African descendant people as Black people fault. Like, so.
Do you think it has a lot to do with? I mean, and you even have it within races, because of certain classes of people, because I'm not doing better than you or whatever, whatever the case may be. And I agree, it is systemic, and it's been like that, way before I was born, and it's still, but for me, and this is for me, it feels a little different this time. And I'm not sure if it's because these particular situations have gone global, or it's because we're in a situation where we are on pause. COVID has got us literally on pause, health-wise, where you can't really do but so much. So
what feels different? You said it feels different. What is it?
For me, this feels different because.
So what is it? Like, what is
the protests, well, not necessarily protests, the way people are handling it, their way of expressing how they feel. And I get it, it's probably because a lot of things are going on and people have been in and I call it a pause state, where they haven't been able to, people are not going to work. People are not, people are pretty much, they don't have that fast circle that they used to have. Go to work, do this, do this, do this, do this, you know, all these things. Now it's like everybody, granted, you still have folks going to work, but it's not like they're in control. Certain things are controlling our narrative and what we actually do. Now, granted, we have free will to do whatever we want to do. You know, we don't want to wear a mask, folks don't wear a mask. If we want to go, you go. But at the same time, there are other things that's going on that's causing folks to say, okay, I got to be careful when I do this, this, and this. But I've seen protests come up for inequality and things of that nature. I've seen it all my life. And each one, I look back at the ones before, you know, and the ones before have not necessarily moved to where we are now. I mean, before you had these things, but and certain things weren't being done. You have cities now going into midnight meetings and changing policy, you know, which you didn't have that before. You know, you have organizations. I mean, granted, it's nice to, you know, fund, throw some, you know, make it rain in different organizations. Get that. But you have, to me, it seems like folks are doing more. It seems like there's a shift in not just, it's like some of a heart shift. Something's going on in here and in here in some people, not everybody. But you see, you're starting to, do I have hope? I do. Do I have faith? Absolutely. But comparing one situation to the other is where a lot of this started. That's where some of these stereotypes have come from, you know, because I had a bad experience over here. I'm going to take that piece of luggage and I'm going to bring it over here into this new situation, you know, and then you keep stacking the deck, you know, and then eventually it's going to crumble. Mm-hmm. I'm like, just for me, I'm just seeing different things, but I just know certain things affect me and certain things I'm passionate about and things of that nature. But it's just like, okay, what is it that we need to do now? For me, we got to have a conversation. First of all, you got to admit that there's a problem. Mm-hmm. You know, and we've all, you don't have to tell an African-American person that there's a problem. We all know that. But now.
Man, there's some that don't believe there's a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing, for those that don't, okay, there's not really much you can do with them until they have an own conviction moment that they actually know what this is. You know? And I'm not saying you got to be Black to understand what this is. If you've had any experience where you've been treated unfairly, where you've been, you know, broken, literally, physically, mentally, you might get a little close to what we feel. But when you don't have people that aren't willing, there's not really much you can do with them. You know, and where we are now, you know, granted, what are you going to do after the protesting is over? You know, I agree. It starts at the local, the state, and the federal. Those are your three. You know, and as an individual, you know, what can I do? For me, I have a platform of having a YouTube channel, okay? I can use my platform to put some different thoughts out there. You know what I'm saying? You know, how do you feel about it? What are you gonna do? You know, granted, we're both, you know, part of the Divine Nine. You know, we have organizations that we're a part of, you know, that we can, you know, do our work in you know, in that capacity. But as an individual, and that's why you always hear me saying people got to do better. But I can't tell somebody to do better unless I'm going to try and do better myself. Yeah. You know, I refuse to be the stereotype of the angry Black woman. You know, and I understand, like you know, you get it walking down the street. You know, people, you know, looking back and holding purses and, you know, stuff like that. And I'm when I'm walking down the street, I want to make sure when I'm walking down the hallway that I see you, you see me. You know, and I've had the experience where I could be walking down a hallway and somebody will come the opposite direction. First thing they do, they drop their head. They don't want to make eye contact. You know, and the first thing, hi, how are you doing today? You know,
Yeah, I mean that's actually, yeah. It's kind of tough to when those kind of instances happen because um did some reading on that because sometimes that is just quite frankly annoying. The people being afraid to speak, people not speaking. And then there's also some research out here that kind of says some of the kind of most common like sub fears, like and I need to kind of double check, but there was allegedly like there was some sub fears of the average person. One of those fears is actually someone slowly approaching you. You kind of create these quick, almost like fear like reactions where you look away. Um, and they've apparently, I think they've looked into that at a scientific level. So it's like sometimes I try to from my side, keep in I try to keep in other concerns simultaneously with the concerns of race because one, that's exactly what someone else is going to try to argue with me about. And I always look I'm a naturally debative person. So like which means I'm actually trying to find like all the different perspectives that can be had on a conversation. Because one, that can enforce mine, and two, that can help someone else really listen to me because I can already essentially think through what they may want to argue about. Um, like, the conceits and all that. But at the end of the day, even with these various different considerations, you know, people cannot avoid that race is still a problem. That is still one of the considerations that has to be included in the, which perspectives are probably the most valid for a particular experience. Um, Racism is not rare yet.
Right,
So
right.
I cannot consider it because I mean, yeah, I do think very probabilistically, if anyone kind of knows, what I'm talking about, probabilistically, I just mean the chance that this entity is true or that this event will occur. So when I think of an event that happens, I'm thinking, well, what's the probably how likely is it this is racially charged? How likely is it
Mm-hmm.
this is economically charged? How likely is this a combination of crap? Because a lot of this stuff is a combination of crap. But one thing I cannot discredit no matter what is that the probability that race is involved is still high. It is not rare yet. And
Right.
people from my front, right, like you talk about your platform and your platform being um you know your YouTube channel and your platform even being your knowledge background because your background is based on helping like uh intellectually building stronger communities. um Mine sits in one of I'm fortunate because mine sits in kind of one of the greatest henchmen of politicians, which is analysis. A politician will throw a number real quick because people really believe numbers once they hear them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's you mean math and statistics. So any I'm still thinking of all the different ways that I can contribute to this because me being a high risk person because I have asthma, um, and me having like a baby right now. um I'm not comfortably in a position to um um one moment.
But see, guys, as you can see, my son and I, we have these kinds of conversations. These are not conversations that um, we sit back and we ignore, and they get intense. They get intense, especially when we all get together. My husband is dead. We all get together and we're sitting back and we're digging in. We're having these conversations about what we feel, and my son, my son is very analytical, very analytical. His way of thinking, and he sits back, he listens, and he takes those mental notes. I can, and then he'll come back and he'll say, well, and he'll repeat it back, and with deep thought, and he takes his time when he has to try to figure out what's actually going on. And like I said, like we both had these situations, him walking down that, that alley type street, and a woman of or anybody that looks at you differently. I don't know many African American men who hasn't had that experience. But it just goes to show we don't know what the other person is thinking. We don't. Based on the evidence of what we've had before, yes, we will presume that that's what it is because there's some sort of fear factor there. But we just try to sit back and like he said, he's trying to figure out what is it that he can do at this point in this process. It's not going to be immediate for everyone. Absolutely not. You have to sit, think, plan, ponder, pray, and decide what is it that, you are going to do. Situation. So we, my husband, when he's in the conversation, but he tells both us that we're both very long-winded. And thank goodness that this Zoom conversation we have is timed, so we can't be so long-winded. But at the end of the day, only thing that I can do is to be the best me I can be, whatever role I'm in. And the goal now is to make sure that, Ro, my grandson and others are in a world that they can not tolerate, but exist in equally with the equal playing field with everyone else. So will we get there? Like I said, I have hope. I have faith. But as long as I can say I'm being part of the solution and not the problem, then I feel good about what I'm doing. When I look at the woman in the mirror, do I have the compassion level softer than a rock? And that's where, I'm looking to do and try to be. My last question and point of this conversation, I'm going to let you end this. And as a father and as a husband, what would you like to see? What are you going to be telling Ro as he gets older? Granted, he has a village, but first and foremost, you're his father, and you will be the example that he sees going forward. You will be the person that he looks to, and he comes to you and start giving you the why questions and reading certain things and asking you those questions and putting you on notice. So, and not that we're trying to be perfect. There's no book when it comes to kids. But at the end of the day, what would you like for him to say? That my dad taught me, and you fill in the blank.
I feel like, there's probably several things, but at least one thing that kind of at least comes to mind right now is understanding to have a balance between thoughtfulness, emotional accessibility, and action, backed by one of the two. So I want him to be a thoughtful person. I want his thoughts to be intentional. So that goes into the questions. That goes into having even harder conversations, in the face of people that may be backed by ignorance, but are still willing to listen. So these are the kind of people that may have power, that are willing to change if they just hear it in a different
Mhm.
way. So that's kind of that more thoughtful conversation. At the same time, and I know this is a big problem for me too. Anyway, is to some degree, but it's like having when the thought won't work, when that logic won't work, and we need to kind of delve into emotionally backed conversations around how he feels about something, um, and and understanding that, because sometimes the change that needs to happen isn't because of logical reactions. Quite frankly, a lot of them, well, I can't say a lot because I don't want to generalize, because that's the problem right now, is a lot of things are being generalized. But one thing that is common in a sense is there's various points of change that are emotionally backed. They are based off of emotional reactions. So sometimes that is needed. And then lastly, when you want to act on something, whatever he feels he needs to act on, whatever. There's a book I read um, called Candid. It's like satire from, I don't know, a couple centuries ago. But the main thing I remembered about it was that after all the kind of stuff that happened in I think the journeys or whatever that the main characters and stuff went on, the last thing that he cared about doing was cultivating his garden. Um, and so, in the sense of, finding ways to care for your environment, care for your world. So that need to act based on logically based actions, and knowing when to act. Sometimes you gotta act a little like based off your emotions. Um, just knowing the balance between them, and there's no perfect balance. They're all going to ebb and flow, but they're all needed in different regards. Right? We can think about the protests right now, and umpteenth people will easily say that people shouldn't be protesting right now because um, they're actually increasing the risk of them dying, because we could hear in like a month that a surge of corona cases have hit, and a surge of the most recent deaths were all from a lot of black people, which,
Mhm.
even though causal relationships statistically are hard to prove, people will easily attest that to anyone that was protesting. Um, and I get it. And I have that fear too. I don't want to see my people get sick because they got to fight this, even though it's if it's a war, it's casualties of war, and people going out are taking that risk.
Mhm.
Um, and the thing is, this was some of these protests. Yeah, they're a little aggressive, they're a little in your face, but to some degree, there's no right way to protest. Um, Boston Tea Party was defacing property.
Mm.
Um, People were destroying goods and services, even though they may not have had buildings like we have now. They destroy property
Mhm.
um, to make a point, and people just kind of read it in a book and like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. You got to revolt, but people haven't really seen revolt in this time frame of like in the past. Probably haven't seen it like that. They're just assuming this only exists in a barbaric time in the history books. But some of those problems in the history books, one, some of the history books are already flawed and fallacious anyway, and then two, um, those problems that exist in those books that are real, some of them are still around, i.e., racism and the actions of it. You know, there's no right way to protest. So if people logically tried to protest this, everyone would have tried to mobilize and was like, all right, we're going to wait until coronavirus. We got 2-week phase. Let's see if this conditionally, once the risk has gone down by X
Mm-hmm.
percentage, then we'll all go out and start protesting. That might not have worked during this.
Right.
It could have. It's a what if question, and the biggest thing
Mm-hmm.
about what ifs is you don't know. You can't really prove anything because it's a what if. So this was heavily emotional, and then logic still involved. There's some strategy going on to some degree, but that was needed. Emotionally based actions were needed in this because it proves a bigger point. The fact that people are intentionally defying current sets of rules in place and current publicized risks means there is something really important that is going on right now that is forcing people to have to do this, which means people go and listen because this plays it says a lot. Um, so yeah, like I said, just to reiterate, kind of the things is that don't be afraid to have intentional thoughts and be thoughtful about things. Do not be afraid to have emotionally backed conversations. Do not be afraid to act on both thought and emotion. The only thing that I hope most is that our children, that my son, that other children learn is to just know how to turn the knobs. Because people gonna ask me what I'm gonna do and what I'll do for this situation, and some of it will be logical, some of it will be emotional, and some of my actions I ain't telling nobody unless for the people involved. Because you think about it, if you're in a war, yeah, we're in a very sharing economy right now, and
Mm-hmm.
pretty people put their opinions out all the time and say I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Nah, sometimes you got to move in silence. So some of my actions, I've been on waves. Don't nobody know what my waves are. Don't nobody need to know. But I know they're doing something, and I know the other ones I got coming are going to do something, and that's not a threat. That's a point of people that have the intention to want to stop any of this stuff going on right now, or stop progress that is needed for a group of people. The best way to counteract that is to know what they're doing. So I ain't gonna tell you everything I'm doing, like to the general public.
I agree. I agree. I mean, everyone, it's just like, an anonymous donor. You
Mm.
know, you don't have to know who I am to know that I'm doing something beneficial, you know. Um, and that's why you've heard me say a lot of times I don't have to be the you know the big executive and I
For
can
the
be behind the scenes, you know what I'm saying, and bust it wide open. I don't have to be the one to dictate this. No, I can blow it up behind the scenes. You not even know, because one is not about me.
yeah.
It's about you know what's going to be best, like you said, for the situation. Things, yes, are going to be. You're going to think, and then you're going to react. You have emotions tied in it, and I agree. There has to be some sort of balance in between the two. Um, and that's why you always hear me say, we got to learn how to balance some stuff a little bit more, because we will give all of ourselves and have nothing in reserve for us, for us as an individual. So I agree. I call this is a time of a do-over, you know, um, reflection, to see, okay, what did I do before? Did that work? If not, let me figure something else out. And yes, everybody does not need to know what you're doing. The right don't need something I know with the left. You don't have to always put that out there play by play by play. It's just like a good football game. I'm gonna tell my opponent, okay, I'm gonna run down the side, hit me at the 40, you know. I don't have to tell them that, because that's what they're gonna be looking to hit me at. So if they shocked if I take a knee and don't do nothing, okay, ooh. So we're gonna see where we end up. But as a family, we're gonna do what we can do.
Yeah.
Within in our village, to make sure that us as individuals are okay. The generations is coming, afterwards, and it doesn't always mean that the wisdom's got to come from the seniors. Sometimes the wisdom gonna come from you, because you give me wisdom all the time. You'll say, "Mom, you'll check me in a minute." I'm like, okay, I need to do that. Let me write that down. So it's gonna flow back and forth, which is great.
Yeah.
But like we said, we're gonna see what the end's gonna bring, because right now, what's been done in the dark is a major big light that's being shown now. So we're gonna see what happens. But as long as we know as individuals, we're doing what we can do. And then united, we can see what more we can do, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, because one thing that I've learned from my side of the world is I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of reading on how to quantitatively understand what a system is, right? So when people use the term systemic and all this other stuff, I've taken the effort to think about that from a quantifiable perspective. So it helps model things, even situations like this. One big thing that it comes to changing something systemic at a systemic level is usually consistent feedback loops and the tweaking of those feedback loops, aka the tweaking of repetitive actions constantly within the system and in getting into contact with the system or its subsystems that will cause the system. It'll take a delay. Every system has a buffer, a delay, speaking those terms. But consistent action, consistent feedback loops of understanding what is the state of the system, what is the state of systemic racism after these sets of actions. It's not about figuring out all the causal relationships. It's about seeing all of our actions consistently going. Let's take a step back. How is this working? Are we still in this? Okay, we are. All right, we got to keep doing consistent action. So the real key is, as we all act as individuals, one thing about the system is that it needs to be an ongoing slew of actions,
Right.
ongoing rechecking and reevaluation of the state of it, whatever it needs to be, because that's how systems really start to change. And sometimes, yeah, you need some radical break crap down to jolt the system into an evolution.
We call it policy. We call it policy feedback theory. You take one policy and you put it out there, and let's get some feedback. Did it work? No, part of the policy did not work. That's exactly what you're talking about. And see where it can be fixed. This is not a situation that is unfixable. It's not, was the one all be all that's it. That's not what this is. The thing about it, it can be fixed.
It just gotta get fixed in multiple spots.
It
just gotta get fixed in multiple spots and ongoing.
Exactly.
Ongoing.
Tweak it in each area. We all know that it's not working. So if we're looking at police departments, and that's what's happening now. The policies that were in place, they don't work.
And now people are going into the policy of the police departments. You're going into the economy or the influence of politically defined budgets. People talking about taking money from police departments. Mm-hmm. So all of it, right? That's the kind of stuff that's going to need to happen.
Right. That's where the hope comes into play. That's where the hope comes into play. Is that okay? This is not terminal.
Mm-mm.
You know, this is not a situation that this is a situation that can be fixed. Now you just got to make sure that you put the people in place, you know, for some of these areas that warrant those areas to be changed. You know, I was always told in some of my classes, you are no more than your leader. And that's a tough conversation to have. But when you listen, you are no more than your leader.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about leadership, and someone says, well, you're no more than your leader. Ooh, you can look at it as so many different ways, you know, but we're gonna see, and I agree with you, son, you know, 100% where it can be changed, it can be fixed. Um, are we willing to do the work? And who's willing to do the work?
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I think there's enough people that's willing now. Um, and as more organization, I hope comes into play in whatever organization that I may or may not be getting involved in, and you may or may not be getting involved in, because, like we said, some of the stuff that we're gonna do is gonna be under an eye of no one. Um, that'll really come into play. The strategy will be real, and stuff will change as that work is done. Because um, it's not that the work hasn't been done in the past. It's just, unfortunately, that work wasn't enough to
Right.
not discredit all the work, because the idea of Black Lives Matter been around for almost a decade, half a decade at least. The sentiment under that been around for forever. But now less people are arguing with that idea, um, and all kinds of stuff. You know, I can't even admit that I had an issue. It's not that I had an issue, but I was at odds, as I think and overthink sometimes, about when the term first came out to me. Um, the idea of Black Lives Matter, and hearing all the other stuff try to flood the noise, like flood his noise, the Blue Lives Matter, the All Lives Matter, and all this other stuff. Um, and realizing that like the combination of those movements were all just, they were going on with, like, fundamentally with misunderstandings of each other. Black Lives Matter didn't mean Black lives were the only lives that matter. It wasn't discrediting all lives that matter. It was the fact that um, we know all damn lives matter. The problem is that us, mathematically speaking, all means all races. If one race is not getting the attention as though it matters, thus all lives matter is now not true, it's false, because all is not considered. So, like, you know, that statement can't be pushed until until the sub statements get pushed properly, which is Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I and that's these are the kinds of things I had to process and think about. But it sheds a light that part of this change is going to be ongoing conversation, and the kind of conversation that allows people's opinions to change. Because I had no opinion at first, go years back, but that didn't mean that I wasn't going to change it. That didn't mean it wasn't going to evolve into not being so nonpartisan and actually having a standing ground on what I believe. Um, but there's plenty of people that need to go through that journey. On especially everyone that's willing to learn, that doesn't understand or is even part of the problem. Um, so yeah, I think I have I have the mental hope for the situation. My emotional hope is there. It is struggling just because there's a combination of stuff going on. So it just requires more energy to have my heart believe. It's a
Right.
lot easier for me to have my mind believe, but that doesn't stop me from putting that energy in.
Right. 'Cause
Um,
you have to
'Cause you,
understand exactly, like you said, people, and that's why I said before, people have to educate themselves. They
yeah,
have to get out of this paralysis of ignorance, of not being even willing to understand. I agree, Black Lives Matter, but understand what that means.
yeah,
Don't take it for face value that you're only talking about one group of people. In a particular situation, yes, Black Lives Matter. When you're seeing within that group so much injustice and disparity, so folks are going to voice their concerns. But I'll tell anybody, anything that you get involved with, do your due diligence. Educate yourself on what these issues are.
yeah,
So you'll have a voice. You'll be able to have a conversation based on being in the know, and having that information. And like you said, sometimes you got to take a sit back, listen, do your own internal, as you said, research. You educated yourself to find out what is this all about? What does this mean? What were the other ones? And it's not to discard anybody else, but everyone should be taken, to educate themselves on certain things. I mean, that's why you have research. That's why you're able to look at the numerical and the analysis side of things, because within mathematics, you have to be able to reason. You have to be able to analyze,
yeah,
and to put yourself in a place, in a space where you can actually break things down. And sometimes you got to break them so far down till you get to that quantitative number to see if that actually answers the question. So time will tell.
yeah,
Uh, Time will tell. And like you said, we have um, organizations, and we have our own individual things that we want to do. We have options to fight this fight within our options, opportunities, and our responsibilities. Um, but I thank you for taking this time to spend with your mother,
yeah,
and just having this conversation, just to um, see where we go, you know, um, and just to show folks that um, conversations are being had. Ours just happened to be between mom and mother and son, but conversations are being had, and
yeah,
you know, how proud I am of you. You know how much I love you, but I'm gonna say it publicly that I love my little boy. But
mm,
this is what I say, that we laugh and we joke about a lot of things, but he is what I call a grown man, a grown African American man who's taking care of his responsibilities as a husband, as a father, um, and as an individual who's learning how to balance. So I thank you for your time. Grandson, the biggest hug. We will probably talk to him later.
yeah.
And love that I said, hey, give her a big old smoochy kiss for me. And we will talk soon.
Yeah,
And
and I
maybe we'll
love.
try to do some more of these on different other things. And, we'll flip the script, and I'll just let you, tables turn. You be asking me a bunch of questions, and we'll do something fun and lighthearted. But
Yeah,
I appreciate your time, sweetie. I really do.
yeah, and thank you for having me, because this is kind of one of the first times I've been able to, outside of like talking to my wife, first time I've been able to kind of start to discuss what I've been processing. Because, like I said, I'm intentionally slow about talking about stuff because I just gotta let it process, not quick to respond. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but no, I love you. I'm proud of you. I know they can't see all the, you know, behind her is books that she's actually written. Y'all can play Where's Her book, so go buy that. It's about rest, as well as there's a lot to be said. So I'm gonna go. I got some new books around quantitative activism, mathematical social justice. That's the only tea I'll drop to people. Just know y'all gonna have a headache with me if
I
y'all.
just got a headache because you know your mother dyslexic. So I'm like, okay, I don't even know what you just said, but this is what I'm saying, people. The boy is let's just say his mathematical mind is beyond comprehension, especially for me with a dyslexic mind who can't even see triangles sometimes and things like that. But I so appreciate you. I have another interview coming up with your auntie Chanel, Dr. Young,
Okay.
who's going to deal with the psychology part of all of this. So
because that's exactly.
yes. So we're gonna get with her real soon to talk about that, and we're gonna have some other ones. I'm doing one-on-ones right now just to give people the opportunities for them to see their side. I'm looking to do law enforcement soon, and we're gonna hit that, and we're gonna see where it goes. But I love you. We will, do what we do. Talk soon. And that's all I can say. I love you.
I love you.
My beautiful brown, the color of coffee with some, but I appreciate you, sweetie. And I thank you for taking your time out your day to do this with me.
Yeah, many times.
Love you. We're going to end this right now before I get to crying.
Love you.
Ah.